The princess laughed at the human, until she learned who he really was. Towering crystal spires reached upward, catching the light of two suns that bathed the capital in a warm, golden glow. Ships of every shape and color hovered in the air, coming and going from distant worlds. Today was a special day, the day when Princess Vela would witness the Arrival Festival, a ceremony where creatures and beings from across the galaxy were brought to the capital to demonstrate their skills and talents. Princess Vela stood on the balcony of the royal palace, her long cloak shimmering in the sunlight. Her eyes, bright and curious, scanned the crowd below. Ministers, guards, and nobles moved with precise grace, but it was the exotic guests that caught her attention. There were towering beings from the icy world of Fravon, whose crystal-like skin reflected light in rainbow colors. Slender, six-limbed creatures from the planet Sauria moved with incredible speed, their voices a melody of musical notes. Tiny creatures that could float in the air on thin currents of energy zipped between guests, leaving trails of glowing particles behind them. Vela had seen many alien beings before, but today she hoped for something new, something unexpected. Her curiosity was insatiable, but so was her pride. She was the daughter of the emperor, raised to command, to judge, and to see the world with the eyes of a ruler. Few things impressed her, and she seldom hid her opinions. The doors at the far end of the Grand Plaza opened, and the latest arrivals began to enter. They were brought in small transport ships, each one unique, each one carrying beings of remarkable talent. There were telepaths who communicated with thought alone, engineers whose creations defied the laws of physics, and dancers who moved in impossible patterns. Vela watched silently, her interest piqued. Then came a human. He stepped from a small, silver craft that looked almost fragile compared to the others. His movements were careful, measured, but clumsy by Zitharan standards. He wore a simple uniform, a mixture of practical design and modest elegance, nothing flashy. His hair, dark and slightly messy, caught the light as he adjusted his stance nervously. The crowd of Zitharans around him whispered, some snickering at his apparent awkwardness. Vela could not resist. She leaned forward on the balcony rail, her lips curling into a small, amused smile. "A human," she said softly. "How ordinary." The human looked up, meeting her gaze for a brief moment. There was no fear, only a quiet confidence. He straightened his back, took a deep breath, and continued walking toward the center of the plaza. His eyes were sharp, alert, and intelligent, though he did not seem to notice the amused laughter of some of the nobles. Vela laughed aloud, a clear sound that drew the attention of those around her. "He doesn't even walk like the others," she whispered, half to herself. "How can anyone take him seriously?" The human paused briefly, as if sensing her amusement, but he did not respond. Instead, he focused on the path ahead, carefully avoiding the elegant displays set up by the other arrivals. A few dignitaries tried to introduce themselves, bowing or offering formal greetings, but he nodded politely and continued forward, ignoring their attempts at flattery. The audience below was a mix of curiosity and ridicule. Humans were rare in this part of the galaxy, and most Zitharans considered them primitive. Their technology was limited, their culture young, and their physical abilities unimpressive compared to the extraordinary talents of Zitharan species. Vela had expected to see a human, of course, but she had imagined someone weaker, someone amusing in the way of a child trying to walk in a world built for giants. Yet there was something in his eyes that made her pause. It was subtle, almost invisible, but there, a flicker of determination, a spark of something beyond the ordinary. She leaned closer, intrigued despite herself. The human reached the central stage of the plaza, a platform made of translucent crystal that floated slightly above the ground. Around him, other creatures performed feats that dazzled the eye. One could bend light into solid shapes. Another created miniature storms in her hands, yet the human did nothing flashy. He simply stood there, hands at his sides, and waited. Vela's amusement grew. She clapped lightly, almost teasingly, as if to say, "Come on, show me what you've got." The human looked up again, and for a second their eyes met. In that moment she saw a calmness, a patience, a quiet strength that seemed unusual for someone so small in stature. The festival coordinator, a tall Zitharan with 4 arms and skin like polished bronze, stepped forward. "We welcome all beings from near and far," he announced, his voice amplified magically so the entire plaza could hear. Let each display their talents and skills for the glory of our empire. One by one, the beings demonstrated remarkable abilities. A Fravonian spun on air currents like a leaf caught in a whirlwind. A Saurian built a tower of glowing orbs in seconds. The crowd cheered, marveling at the displays. Finally, it was the human's turn. Vela leaned back on the balcony, expecting something clumsy or foolish. She did not expect anything impressive at all. The human walked forward calmly. He scanned the stage and the instruments placed around it. Then, without any grand gesture, he began to assemble a small device from simple components he had brought with him. His movements were precise, each step deliberate. Within moments, he had created a contraption that floated in midair, spinning with perfect balance. It glowed softly, projecting images that seemed to move with a mind of their own. The crowd fell silent. Some murmured in disbelief. Others whispered, "How is this possible?" Vela's laughter faded, replaced by a sharp curiosity. She watched as the images the device created began to interact with the stage itself, moving obstacles, adjusting lighting, and enhancing the performances of others. It was subtle, clever, and entirely unexpected. The human stepped back and allowed the device to operate independently. It moved as if it had a mind, responding to the stage and the performers in ways that no Zitharan technology had ever done before. The audience erupted into applause, not just for the human, but for the ingenuity of his creation. Vela blinked. Her pride refused to yield immediately, but she felt a twinge of something she rarely experienced: surprise. The human had taken something ordinary, simple tools, limited resources, and turned it into something extraordinary. She leaned forward again, studying him. His expression remained calm, almost humble, as if he were unaware of the attention he had drawn. There was no arrogance, no attempt to dominate or impress, yet his skill spoke louder than words ever could. The festival coordinator approached, his four arms gesturing in awe. "Remarkable," he said. "Your talent is unlike anything we have seen." "Tell us, human, from which world do you come?" The human smiled faintly. "I am from Earth," he said simply, "and I have traveled far to learn and to share what I can." A ripple of laughter spread through some of the younger nobles. "Earth," one whispered. "That tiny backward planet?" Vela's eyes narrowed. The laughter annoyed her, but it also made her curious. She wanted to know more about this human who could turn ordinary things into wonders. She could not deny it. He had captured her attention in a way few beings ever had. As the festival continued, the human mingled politely, observing other demonstrations with interest. He asked questions, offered suggestions, and occasionally adjusted a small detail here or there, subtly improving performances without claiming credit. Vela noticed every move, every gesture. She saw intelligence, patience, and a rare kind of humility combined with extraordinary skill. By the time the sun began to set over Zithara, painting the city in shades of gold and crimson, Vela found herself thinking about him constantly. She had laughed at him when he arrived, mocking what she thought was his weakness. But now she realized she had underestimated him completely. There was more to him than met the eye, and she could feel, deep inside, that his story had only just begun. And in the quiet of her chambers that night, Vela could not help but wonder, who was this human, really? The morning sun rose over the capital of Zithara, casting long, golden beams across the floating crystal towers. The city was alive with anticipation. Today marked the beginning of the trial games, a tradition that had existed for centuries. In these games, visitors and citizens alike tested their skills in a series of challenges designed to measure intellect, agility, and strategy. Winners earned recognition, honors, and the respect of the empire. Princess Vela stood in the royal gallery overlooking the main arena. Her eyes followed the participants as they entered one by one. Some were graceful, others strong, and many had abilities that seemed beyond imagination. Vela's mind was focused, critical. She knew each display could reveal the strengths and weaknesses of every being present. She had already watched the human arrive and perform at the festival the day before. His small, deliberate actions had surprised her, but she still held a trace of doubt. Could he compete in the trial games against these extraordinary beings? The crowd cheered as the trials began. The first challenge tested agility and reflexes. Participants navigated a floating obstacle course suspended high above the arena floor. Some beings leaped effortlessly, moved with perfect timing, or manipulated energy fields to carry themselves through the course. When the human, Elias Harper, approached the starting line, murmurs spread through the audience. "Will he even finish?" whispered one noble. "He seems too ordinary," said another. Vela's lips curved in a small, amused smile. She folded her arms, watching him closely, ready to enjoy the spectacle of his failure. Elias adjusted his stance and focused on the course ahead. Unlike others who relied on supernatural strength or complex technology, he began by observing carefully. He noted the movement patterns of the obstacles and calculated each step in his mind. Then, with quiet determination, he moved forward. At first, he stumbled. A platform shifted beneath his foot, and he nearly lost balance. Some in the crowd laughed, thinking their judgment confirmed. Vela, however, noticed something different. He didn't panic. Instead, he adjusted his weight, shifted his hands, and continued. With each obstacle, he moved deliberately, using his surroundings cleverly. He didn't need strength or fancy abilities. He used timing, physics, and observation. By the time he reached the end, the audience was silent. No one had expected a human to complete the course so smoothly. Vela's amusement had faded into curiosity. She leaned forward, her eyes wide. "Interesting," she murmured. The next trial tested intelligence and strategy. Participants were given a puzzle, a holographic map filled with moving nodes and shifting patterns. They had to connect certain points without breaking the flow or triggering alarms. Many beings hesitated, overwhelmed by the complexity. Others relied on instinct, rushing through, only to fail repeatedly. Elias crouched before the map. He didn't rush. Instead, he observed, tracing the movement of the nodes, predicting their paths. Slowly, carefully, he drew connections, testing each possibility. When he made a small error, he corrected it quickly without losing momentum. The pattern came together perfectly. The crowd murmured again, impressed. Princess Vela could hardly look away. Each success of the human challenged her assumptions. His methods were unconventional, unlike anything she had seen in the Empire. Other competitors relied on power, speed, or innate talent. Elias relied on thought, patience, and creativity. His human mind saw possibilities that others overlooked. The third trial tested teamwork. Participants were paired with others, tasked to build a complex structure in a limited time using only the materials provided. Many beings struggled to cooperate, arguing or trying to control the project. Elias, however, adapted easily. He observed his teammates' strengths, assigned tasks efficiently, and even improved the design using simple but clever adjustments. Vela noticed that the human's ability to think outside the expected patterns gave them an advantage that seemed almost magical. It was not magic, of course. It was ingenuity. A human mind could find a solution where even the smartest Zitharan failed. By the afternoon, Elias had completed 3 trials, each with increasing difficulty. He ranked among the top participants, surprising the audience and frustrating some of the nobles who had underestimated him. Vela felt a mix of emotions: pride for her empire, curiosity for this human, and a faint embarrassment at having laughed at him before. Between trials, Vela decided to speak to him directly. She descended to the arena floor, her cloak flowing behind her. The crowd parted as she approached. "You perform well for a human," she said, her voice light but carrying authority. "I did not expect such skill." Elias looked at her, calm and respectful. "Thank you, Princess Vela. I am here to learn and to share what I know, that is all." Vela raised an eyebrow. "Humble words, yet your results are extraordinary. Tell me what drives you to succeed when others would fail." Elias considered her question. "I believe that no matter how small or weak one seems, careful thought and action can overcome great obstacles. I do not rely on strength alone." Vela felt a flicker of admiration. She had seen many beings with power, but few with the combination of intelligence, patience, and courage that Elias displayed. She could not deny it. He was remarkable. The final trial of the day was the most difficult, a test of quick thinking under pressure. Participants were placed in a simulated environment that mimicked a dangerous alien landscape. They had to navigate traps, solve puzzles, and reach a specific point within a limited time. Many participants panicked, failing quickly. Elias entered the simulation with calm determination. He observed each challenge carefully, calculating paths and possibilities. When traps activated, he used the environment cleverly to avoid harm. When puzzles appeared, he solved them with speed and creativity. Other beings relied on their power or reflexes, but he relied on his mind. At the end of the trial, Elias emerged as one of the top scorers, astonishing everyone. The crowd erupted into cheers, unable to deny his talent. Vela stood silently, her pride in him mingled with surprise. The human she had laughed at, the one she had thought ordinary, had proven himself in every way. Later, in a private chamber, Vela reflected on the day. She had learned something important. Appearances were often misleading. Strength was not only measured in power or ability, but in cleverness, courage, and determination. Humans, she realized, had a quality that many Zitherans lacked: the ability to think differently, to see solutions that others could not. As night fell over Zithera, the city glowed like a constellation brought to Earth. Vela looked out from her balcony, her mind still on the human. She had laughed at him when he arrived, dismissing him as ordinary. Now she understood that she had been wrong. Elias Harper had not only completed the trial games with skill and ingenuity, but he had also challenged her assumptions about strength, intelligence, and courage. He was more than a visitor from a distant planet. He was someone who could change the way the Empire saw the universe. Vela felt a spark of anticipation. If a human could perform so brilliantly in these trials, what else could he achieve? She did not yet know the full extent of his abilities, but one thing was certain: the story of this human was only beginning, and she would watch closely as it unfolded. And for the first time, Princess Vela wondered if she had met someone who could truly teach her something new about the galaxy, and about herself. The air over Zithera was tense. For days, scouts had reported strange energy signatures approaching the outer edges of the Empire. At first, the warnings were dismissed as routine anomalies. But as the signals grew stronger, the Council of Generals realized the truth. An unknown fleet was moving rapidly through the galaxy, and its technology surpassed anything Zithera had faced in centuries. Princess Vela paced in the council chamber, her long cloak brushing against the polished floor. Advisors, generals, and nobles stood around, discussing possibilities. Maps of the Empire's star systems floated in the air, showing potential attack routes and weak points. The threat was real, and every moment of delay could cost countless lives. "Princess," said General Tharian, a tall Zitheran with bronze skin and 4 arms, "we must act now. Our forces alone may not be enough. We need strategies that can exploit weaknesses in their fleet." Vela nodded, her mind racing. She thought of Elias Harper, the human who had surprised her at the trial games. If anyone could offer a fresh perspective, it was him. "Bring him here," she ordered. "If he has ideas, we should hear them." When Elias arrived, he moved calmly through the chamber. His simple uniform stood out among the elaborate attire of the Zitherans, yet there was no lack of authority in his presence. He observed the maps carefully, asking questions in a clear, precise voice. "Have you studied their movement patterns?" he asked. "What are their strongest weapons and what are their limitations?" General Tharian raised an eyebrow. "We have some intelligence, but much is unknown. You will have to think creatively, human. Your ideas may save us." Elias nodded. "Then let's start with what we know. A fleet is only as strong as its coordination. If we can disrupt their communication, we can create confusion. We can use decoys and unexpected maneuvers to make them miscalculate." The generals exchanged skeptical glances. Many Zitherans relied on raw power and advanced technology, believing it to be superior in every circumstance. But Vela's curiosity had grown into cautious respect. She motioned for Elias to continue. "Consider their approach path," he said, pointing at the holographic map. "They expect us to defend the capital directly. But if we use smaller, fast-moving ships to flank them, we can force them to divide their fleet. Meanwhile, we can use energy nets to disable their primary weapons temporarily. It will not destroy them, but it will give us time to counterattack." Vela felt a spark of hope. The human's plan was bold and unconventional, unlike anything the generals had proposed, yet she could see the logic. His strategy relied not on overpowering the enemy, but on outthinking them. General Tharian frowned. "It is risky. If we fail, the capital may be lost." Elias met his gaze calmly. "Risk is part of any plan. But careful observation, timing, and creativity can reduce the risk significantly. We must use what they do not expect." Vela's heart pounded. She could feel the weight of the decision, yet she trusted the human more than any advisor present. "We will follow his plan," she announced. The room fell silent. Some generals looked shocked, but Vela's confidence was firm. She had seen Ilias think and act with clarity that few could match. Preparations began immediately. Zitharan engineers worked alongside Ilias to create decoy ships and energy nets. Troops practiced complex maneuvers, adapting their skills to his unconventional strategies. Vela observed closely, fascinated by how easily he integrated with the Zitharan forces. He did not command with arrogance. He guided with precision and clarity, earning respect without demanding it. When the first wave of the enemy fleet appeared on the horizon, the city held its breath. Massive ships, sleek and menacing, moved through space with perfect formation. The humans and Zitharans in the control rooms watched as the enemy prepared to strike. "Deploy the decoys," Ilias instructed. "Position the flanking ships here and here. Timing is critical. Follow my signals exactly." The decoy ships moved first, small and agile, creating false targets that drew enemy fire. The fleet split as the attackers attempted to neutralize what appeared to be key vessels. Meanwhile, the Zitharan flanking ships, guided by Ilia's commands, struck from unexpected directions, disrupting enemy coordination. Vela watched from the palace observation deck, her hands gripping the railing. Her heart raced as she saw the enemy ships falter, their formations breaking under a strategy they had never anticipated. She realized in that moment the full extent of human ingenuity. It was not raw strength or advanced technology alone that determined victory. It was the ability to think differently, to predict, to adapt. The battle continued for hours. Enemy ships fired devastating energy beams, but the Zitharans, guided by Ilia's plan, avoided the worst of the attacks. Energy nets launched, immobilizing key vessels temporarily. The human strategy unfolded like a perfect game of chess, each move calculated, each counter carefully timed. Finally, the enemy fleet, unable to maintain formation, began to retreat. They had underestimated the humans and the cleverness of Zitharan minds working alongside them. Cheers erupted across the capital as the city realized they had been saved from near destruction. Vela descended to the battlefield afterward, moving toward Ilias. She found him standing calmly, observing the damage reports with a careful eye. He looked up as she approached, offering a faint smile. "You did it," she said softly, her voice a mixture of relief and admiration. "You saved the city." Ilias shook his head. "I did not do it alone. Your people followed the plan, executed the maneuvers perfectly. The credit belongs to them as much as to me." Vela felt a warmth in her chest. His humility, combined with his brilliance, made him remarkable in a way that words could not fully describe. She realized she had misjudged him from the start. He was not merely a visitor from a distant planet. He was a mind capable of understanding problems, predicting outcomes, and finding solutions where others could not. "Tell me," she said, her tone gentle, "how did you learn to think like this?" Ilias considered the question. "I have faced many challenges on my home planet. I have learned that no matter how strong or powerful the opponent, careful thought, preparation, and observation can make a difference. Brute force alone is rarely enough. The mind, when used well, can overcome great obstacles." Vela nodded slowly. She understood now that her laughter upon his arrival had been misplaced. This human, small and seemingly ordinary, had saved her city and her people using nothing but intelligence, creativity, and courage. As the night fell, the city celebrated its victory, but Vela stayed on the observation deck with Ilias. The stars above Zithara seemed brighter than ever, reflecting in the human's calm eyes. She realized that the galaxy was larger and more complex than she had imagined, and that humans, despite their simple appearance, could achieve greatness. "This is only the beginning," she said quietly. "I want to learn more about you, Ilias Harper. About your people, your world, and what else you are capable of." Ilias looked at her with a thoughtful smile. "There is much to learn, Princess, and I believe we can learn from each other. Together we can face challenges that no single species could overcome alone." Vela nodded, a sense of purpose filling her. She had laughed at him once, dismissing his abilities. Now she saw clearly that this human was extraordinary, not because of strength or technology, but because of his courage, ingenuity, and determination. The stars above Zithara shone as if in approval, and Vela knew one truth she could not ignore. The galaxy was changing, and with humans like Ilias Harper, Zithara would never face challenges alone again. The enemy fleet had not disappeared entirely. Though the first wave had retreated, Intelligence reports indicated a larger armada was approaching, stronger and more determined than before. Panic rippled through the capital, despite the previous victory. The citizens of Zithra whispered nervously, while generals and advisors debated strategies late into the night. Princess Vela stood silently in her chambers, overlooking the city. The warm glow of the palace lights reflected off the crystal towers, but her mind was far from calm. She had already seen the humans' brilliance in the trial games and in the initial defense. But this new threat felt different, more dangerous. And yet a part of her could not ignore the growing admiration she felt for him. A soft knock at the door pulled her from her thoughts. Elias Harper entered quietly, carrying a small tablet of data. His expression was calm, but his eyes held focus that matched her own. "Princess," he said politely, "I have reviewed the enemy's patterns. Their movements suggest that this is not a single fleet but a coordinated strike by multiple factions. Their technology is advanced, yes, but it has predictable limitations. If we use timing and strategy, we can counter them effectively." Vela nodded. "I trust your judgment. Tell me what we need to do." Elias placed the tablet on the table and began outlining a strategy. "We will split their forces. The largest ships are vulnerable if we force them into narrow corridors between the asteroid fields. Smaller attack vessels can flank from behind while our energy nets disable key weapons temporarily. I have also developed a sequence of countermeasures that can neutralize their targeting systems for a short period, giving us a window to strike." Vela leaned in, listening carefully. Each suggestion was precise, logical, and bold. She realized that Elias did not rely on guesswork. Every decision was based on careful analysis and understanding of both enemy and environment. His mind worked in ways that even the most experienced Zitharan generals had not considered. Hours later, the enemy fleet entered Zitharan space. The battle began with a deafening roar as massive energy beams tore through the void. The city trembled with each strike. Vela watched from the observation deck as the Zitharan fleet executed Elia's strategy with flawless timing. The decoy ships drew the largest enemy vessels away, while smaller fleets moved swiftly through narrow corridors between the asteroids. Energy nets launched, capturing key weapons and immobilizing crucial ships. Every move was calculated, every maneuver deliberate. Vela's breath caught as she saw Elias in the command center, issuing instructions calmly, his voice steady and clear. He coordinated ships from multiple squads simultaneously, predicting enemy movements with near-perfect accuracy. Even the generals, who had once doubted him, watched in awe. The battle reached its climax when the enemy flagship, a massive vessel bristling with energy cannons, attempted a direct assault on the capital. The Zitharan fleet hesitated for a moment, unsure of how to counter its immense power, but Elias had anticipated this. He directed a coordinated strike using flanking ships and energy nets. The flagship's weapons were disabled, its movements restricted, and the capital remained untouched. Vela's heart raced as she watched the enemy retreat, their armada scattered and broken. The city erupted in cheers, celebrating a victory that seemed almost impossible. After the battle, Vela made her way to the command center. The generals had left, exhausted and in awe, leaving her alone with Elias. She approached him cautiously, her curiosity and admiration mingled with disbelief. "Elias," she began, her voice soft, "I must know, who are you really?" Elias looked at her calmly. "I am a human from Earth," he said simply. "But I suspect that is not the question you are asking." Vela hesitated. She had seen his skill, his intelligence, his courage, but she sensed there was more, something he had not revealed. Elias nodded as if reading her thoughts. "I serve as a leader in the Interstellar Federation, a coalition of human worlds dedicated to peace and cooperation. My role is to study, to understand, and to assist civilizations facing extraordinary threats. I have faced challenges far beyond what most could imagine, and I have learned to find solutions where others see only danger." Vela's eyes widened. The human she had laughed at, dismissed as ordinary, was a decorated leader from a powerful interstellar organization. He had faced wars, crises, and threats that Zitharans could not comprehend, and yet he had arrived quietly without arrogance to assist her people. "You," she whispered, struggling to find words. "You saved my city, you saved my people. And all this without anyone knowing who you truly were." Elias nodded. I did what was necessary. Titles and recognition are not important. The safety of your people mattered more than pride or honor. Vela felt a wave of humility and admiration. She had underestimated humans from the start, judging them by appearances and assumptions. Now she understood that their true strength lay not in technology or size, but in intelligence, courage, and determination. She stepped closer, her eyes searching his face. I laughed at you when you arrived, she admitted softly. I thought you were ordinary. I was wrong, so very wrong. Elias offered a faint smile. It is easy to underestimate others, Princess. I have learned that appearances can be deceiving. Strength comes in many forms, and every being has the potential to achieve greatness. Vela's mind raced. She had always been taught to value power, to respect those with advanced technology or innate ability. Yet here was a human, small, seemingly ordinary, who had outsmarted an enemy fleet, saved the capital, and shown wisdom beyond her expectations. I want to learn from you, she said finally. Not only about strategy and combat, but about your ways of thinking, your perspective on challenges. There is much we can gain from humans like you. Elias nodded. And I would be honored to share what I know, Princess. Together, we can face challenges that no single civilization could overcome alone. Your people are capable of incredible things, Vela. With the right guidance and perspective, the Empire can achieve even greater heights. Vela felt a surge of inspiration. She realized that the galaxy was far larger and more complex than she had imagined. There were beings like Elias, whose minds could shape the future in ways that strength alone could not. And she knew in that moment that Zithra had found not only a savior, but also a mentor, a guide, and a friend in the human who had once seemed so ordinary. Later, as the city celebrated the hard-won victory, Vela returned to her chambers. She looked out over the glowing towers and the star-filled sky. For the first time, she allowed herself to imagine a future where humans and Zithrans worked together, where creativity, intelligence, and courage united to overcome any obstacle. And in that quiet moment, she promised herself one thing: she would never again underestimate a human. She had laughed at Elias Harper once, dismissing him as unremarkable. Now she understood the truth. He was extraordinary, not because of power or title, but because of the mind, the courage, and the heart that guided every action he took. The stars above Zithra seemed brighter than ever, reflecting in her eyes. She felt hope, determination, and admiration all at once. The galaxy was vast, full of challenges yet to come, and with humans like Elias Harper, she knew they could face whatever awaited them. And as she turned back to the room, she saw Elias studying the reports again, calm, focused, and ready for the next challenge. She understood now that this was only the beginning. His brilliance had revealed a new way of thinking, a new path for the Empire, and a new understanding of what humans were truly capable of. Princess Vela smiled quietly. She had laughed at him once. But now she knew the truth. Elias Harper was more than a visitor, more than a human. He was a force of ingenuity, courage, and wisdom that could change the fate of worlds. The morning after the great battle, the city of Zithra was alive with a sense of relief and celebration. Citizens filled the streets, cheering for the bravery of the fleet and the victory that had preserved their homes. Banners waved in the breeze, and the crystal towers shimmered in the sunlight, reflecting the joy of the people. Yet amid the celebration, Princess Vela remained in her chambers, gazing out at the capital with quiet thoughtfulness. She thought of Elias Harper, the human who had surprised, challenged, and now deeply impressed her. His intelligence, courage, and calm leadership had saved the city. But more than that, he had opened her mind to a truth she had only begun to understand. Strength was not measured by size, power, or technology alone. It was measured by thought, creativity, and the willingness to act when it mattered most. Vela's thoughts were interrupted by a knock at the door. Elias entered, carrying a small data pad. He moved with his usual calm confidence, his presence quiet yet commanding. "Princess Vela," he said, "the remaining enemy forces are retreating beyond our borders. It seems the immediate threat is over, but we must prepare for any future attacks." Vela nodded. "Yes, but I want more than preparation. I want understanding. I want to ensure that our people and your people can work together for the safety of all." Elias smiled faintly. "Then we should discuss the future, not only for Zithra but for the galaxy as a whole. The challenges we face are larger than any one civilization. Cooperation and mutual respect will be essential." Vela gestured for him to sit. She felt a mixture of admiration, curiosity, and gratitude. "You have taught me much in a short time. I admit, I laughed at you when you first arrived. I thought you were ordinary. I was wrong. You are extraordinary." Elias shook his head slightly, his expression humble. "I did what was necessary, Princess. That is all." "No," Vela said firmly. "What you did goes beyond necessity. You showed us a way of thinking we had not considered. You reminded us that intelligence, creativity, and courage can outweigh raw power." For a moment, silence filled the room. Outside, the sounds of celebration continued, but inside, the two of them shared a quiet understanding. Vela realized that the human had changed her perspective, and perhaps even the future of the Empire itself. "Elias," she said softly, "I want to formalize an alliance, not just for our people, but for knowledge, learning, and mutual growth. Will you help me establish a partnership between humans and Zitherans?" Elias considered her words carefully. "An alliance of trust and cooperation? Yes, I believe that would be wise. Together, our civilizations can face challenges that no single species could overcome." Vela's heart lifted. She had once dismissed humans as simple and weak. Now she saw clearly that they were capable of remarkable achievements. She smiled, a mixture of relief and excitement. "Then let us begin, not as ruler and visitor, but as partners." Over the next weeks, preparations for the formal alliance took shape. Scientists, engineers, and leaders from Zithra worked alongside humans to share knowledge and technology. Training programs were established to teach the Zitherans new ways of thinking and problem-solving. Humans learned from Zitheran expertise as well, combining their unique approaches to create innovations that neither species could have achieved alone. Vela observed all of this with fascination. She spent hours speaking with Elias, learning about human philosophy, strategy, and science. In turn, she shared Zitheran culture, history, and technology with him. Their discussions were long and thoughtful, filled with curiosity and mutual respect. Slowly, she realized that her laughter at his arrival had been replaced by admiration, friendship, and trust. One evening, after a day of planning and instruction, Vela and Elias walked together along the balcony of the palace. The city stretched below them, glowing under the light of two setting suns. The streets were quiet now, the celebrations having settled into peaceful contentment. "Do you ever get tired?" Vela asked, smiling. "You've been working tirelessly, yet you remain calm and focused." Elias chuckled softly. "Tired? Yes, sometimes, but focus is necessary when lives are at stake. When you care for others, you find strength you did not know you had." Vela nodded thoughtfully. She thought of her people, the fleet, and the Empire as a whole. Elias had proven that strength came in many forms, and she could see how this lesson would guide her for the rest of her life. "You've changed me," she said quietly. "I laughed at you when you arrived, but now I see things differently. You've shown me the importance of humility, creativity, and courage." Elias looked at her calmly. "And you have shown me the strength of your people, Princess. Leadership is not only about strategy or strength, it is about vision, care, and the ability to inspire others. Together we can achieve much." Vela smiled, feeling a warmth she had not expected. "Then let us inspire each other," she said, "not only for today but for the future." As the night sky stretched above Zithra, filled with stars and distant worlds, Vela and Elias reflected on all that had happened. A human, once underestimated, had saved her city and changed her perspective. A princess, once proud and cautious, had opened her heart to trust, respect, and partnership. Together, they had begun something new, a bond between worlds, a promise of cooperation, and a vision for a galaxy where intelligence, courage, and creativity could overcome even the greatest challenges. The alliance was formally announced the next day in a grand ceremony. Leaders from across the Empire and representatives from the human worlds gathered to witness the momentous occasion. Vela and Elias stood side by side on a floating stage, their hands raised in a gesture of unity. The crowd cheered, celebrating not only victory but also hope for a future of cooperation and learning. Vela spoke to the gathered assembly, her voice confident and strong. "Today, we take the first step toward a new era. An era where knowledge, courage, and cooperation guide our decisions. We have learned that strength is not measured by size or power alone, but by the mind, the heart, and the willingness to act when it matters most." Elias added, "And we have learned that even small actions, guided by intelligence and creativity, can have an impact far greater than expected. Together, We can face challenges that no single civilization could overcome alone. The crowd erupted into cheers again, and Vela felt a sense of pride and hope unlike anything she had experienced before. She looked at Elias, who returned her gaze with calm confidence and quiet strength. As the ceremony ended, the citizens of Zithra and the human representatives mingled, sharing stories, exchanging knowledge, and forming bonds that would last for generations. It was a celebration not only of victory, but of understanding, respect, and the limitless potential of cooperation. Later, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Vela and Elias returned to the palace balcony. The city glowed beneath them, and the stars above reflected the promise of countless worlds waiting to be explored together. "You've taught me something important," Vela said softly. "That greatness can come from anyone, anywhere, if they have courage, intelligence, and heart." Elias nodded. "And you've taught me that leadership and vision are equally powerful. When we combine our strengths, there is nothing we cannot achieve." Vela smiled, feeling a deep sense of contentment and anticipation for the future. "Then let us face the galaxy together," she said. Elias looked out at the stars, his expression calm and confident. "Yes, together we will face the challenges ahead and we will succeed." And so the story of the human who had arrived quietly, laughed at by a princess, became a story of hope, courage, and partnership. Elias Harper had shown that humans could achieve greatness not through force alone, but through intelligence, ingenuity, and determination. Princess Vela had learned that assumptions could be misleading, and that respect, trust, and cooperation could unlock potential greater than anyone had imagined. The city of Zithra slept that night under a sky filled with stars, and the promise of a new alliance shone brighter than any crystal tower. A human and a princess, once strangers, had forged a bond that would change the future of their worlds forever. The galaxy was vast, full of challenges and wonders, but for the first time, Zithra and its people were ready to face it with courage, wisdom, and the limitless potential of cooperation. And as Vela looked at Elias, she knew the laughter of the past had been replaced with respect, admiration, and hope. The human she had once dismissed as ordinary was extraordinary, and together they would shape the future of countless worlds.